Great stuff. Thank you very much, Amelia. And really nice to have you all with us today. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see so many of you on the call. I'm going to share my screen. I am the CEO and founder of a business called 51 Degrees. We support businesses to adopt AI technologies and also data science technologies, and we do a lot with AI agents, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. I'm going to try and make it interactive in as much as we're going to do a live demo at the end of some of the stuff that we do, and I'm going to talk about some of the concepts that hopefully give you the building blocks of AI agents. One thing that's to say is it is a complex topic, and there is so much amazing stuff online, so do jot down notes and go away and research things afterwards, because inevitably we can't cover absolutely everything here today, but hopefully I'll give you a good foundation for AI agents. So we're going to cover 3 modules. The first one is sort of high level, is what is an AI agent. We're then going to look at some case studies in the second module of some real agents that I've recently built. And then the third module in the session, we are going to look at some live demos. So I'll jump straight in. What are AI agents? Well, AI agents, in simple terms, are autonomous pieces of software that can perform tasks independently with your direction. So a chatbot, for example, is something that you clearly interact with in a to and fro sort of fashion. If it's ChatGPT, for example, and you ask ChatGPT to do something for you, it comes back immediately and gives you the answer to whatever you've asked. What an AI agent does is it uses a range of different pieces of technology that we're going to come on to do more than just that simple to and fro with a chat or something like ChatGPT. And instead, it can bring together all sorts of different pieces of context, we call them, which are pieces of information. It might be connected to databases and other pieces of technology to do many pieces of work simultaneously, as opposed to that just sort of simple to and fro that you have with a chatbot. So how do they work specifically? Well, I always think of them in a simple sort of flow diagram. The first is every AI agent starts with a trigger. And so that trigger might be an email has arrived from somewhere, or it might be that you send the agent a Slack message on the comms platform called Slack. It might be that something else has happened. So, for example, a customer has applied for something, or something's happened in the database, or something's happened somewhere along the way that ultimately flags to the AI agent that this is a starting point for it to start doing its work. The next component within this, as Amelia said, please do, if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the comments, and we'll try and address them either during the session or at the end. So if anything comes out that you're thinking about, please ask away. The next component within the AI agents are tools or integrations. And so you can really integrate an AI agent with virtually anything. So, for example, things that we use extensively when we're building AI agents for our clients include website scraping. So that might be, I'm going to keep on using IV, obviously, as my example. It might be that you'd say to the AI agent, go to the IV website and scrape all of the information off that website. That means, in simple terms, it's literally copying and pasting all the words off that website, but it can also take the images. It can also take the structure of the website underneath it. It can do almost anything. And website scraping is often something we put into an AI agent. All of this will start to sort of build a picture and hopefully come together as we go through the session today. Another thing that you'd often integrate an AI agent with is a database. So in this case, it can be more complex, but let's say, for example, a company has its proprietary tech system. You've created an API integration into that proprietary tech system, so the AI agent can get information directly from the database. We did the same thing with other platforms, like, for example, a CRM system like Salesforce or HubSpot. Again, the AI agent can integrate with those platforms and drag the information from those platforms into the same with Google Workspace and tons of other businesses and platforms. What happens next is essentially, and some of this happens iteratively, so it goes around and round and around. But what happens next is some logic is applied to the information that's been captured from those tools. And then finally, at the end of the whole process, the AI agent produces an action. And so that action might be to send another email back out to somebody else, or to send a Slack message with something, or to produce a report, or various different sort of mechanisms to finish that process. And so what this process, these 4 steps, has done is enable that AI agent, which is essentially a digital teammate, to go through a whole process, a whole set of steps that typically would be a piece of work that someone is doing in their daily life. And these AI agents can be big and small. They can be, consuming huge amounts of data, or relatively minimal. So, for example, sometimes an individual team member will use an AI agent to just do one single piece of their work, for example, whereas a whole team might implement AI agents in order to automate significant swathes of the work that team would have done previously. Where AI agents really thrive is they are amazing at doing the mundane work that typically team members do not enjoy doing. And so it's a really nice relationship where team members are given time back to focus on value add activities, the activities that they enjoy more, whereas the AI agents will do the activities that are typically more mundane. How are AI agents built? Well, they're built in a range of different ways. The first is from code. So we literally create pieces of software that are written in a coding language that can do some of these things for teams. Writing these agents from codes maximizes the flexibility. They're ideal for custom and complex workflows. They often require development resources, so it has to have a development team working into it. But they're very effective for high volume, mission critical activities that a business would undertake. Next, though, for the more technical people on the call, you can use low code platforms. And at this point, you get to the place where anybody who is somewhat technical can probably build an agent themselves using one of these sorts of platforms. And in this case, you are putting the building blocks together, like I said in the previous slide, the trigger, the tools, the logic, and the actions. You're putting those building blocks together in order to fulfill a piece of work that you're doing in your daily role. And so, these low-code platforms include businesses like N8N, or Relevance AI, or Crew AI, which are all relatively new businesses that have launched in the last sort of 3 to 5 years, but they've made it so you can build these AI agents via a user interface, a website screen, basically, where you can drag and drop the individual components in, connect to the dots. So you've got all of these connections coming between the different platforms, and then bring that information into the AI agent platform, such as N8N, and do the activities in N8N. And the final way of building agents is something that's probably only a couple of months old, which is so typical of the AI changes that we're seeing across industry today. Everything's happening so quickly, which is both brilliant and scary all at the same time. But we've seen the AI platforms such as OpenAI or Perplexity have been releasing AI-based browsers. So OpenAI has recently, OpenAI is the business that makes ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has recently launched Atlas. Perplexity has launched Comet. But my favorite is a startup called Strawberry Browser. Sadly, they do have a wait list. I don't know whether that's trying to create the feeling of exclusivity or not, but anyway, there is a wait list. So I urge you to join the wait list, and it's a really, really simple process to build AI agents within a browser technology. All of this will make a little bit more sense as I go on, I hope. So that third way is, essentially using AI browsers to produce AI agents within that piece of software. Okay. So next, I'm going to come on to some examples of how we would use AI agents in action. There are basically an endless number of ways that you can use AI agents. I'm going to talk about a couple of specific ones because they're tools that I've built for myself recently. And for the avoidance of doubt, everyone in my team is technical, but I'm probably the least technical. And so therefore, if I can build them, then probably most people can. So I urge you to give this a go in your own time. Find a little project that it might be for a hobby or a sports club or whatever it is, something in your daily life. Find a way of trying to weave this in and just have a go at building them. The brilliant thing about all of these platforms and technologies is they almost all come with a freemium version, so you don't have to spend any money to do this. You can go and sign up to one of these accounts and just have a go. And I have to say, that is, in my opinion, by far the best way of learning. Go and sign up for one of these accounts and give it a go. So yeah, the first example of an AI agent in action is a digital PR agent that I've built for myself, and we have got pieces live in production that this agent has built for me or conducted for me. So the PR challenge, well, PR as in public relations is the concept of a business producing a piece of work that it's going to then send to journalists to get a message across. And very often the reason for doing that is to promote your business. And so clearly 51 Degrees is trying to promote itself at times. And so we undertake this activity called digital PR, which is where we'll go and research a topic extensively to understand, is there an opportunity to write a new piece, which we'll then publish on our website as a piece of content. And that piece of content then basically will send to journalists to say, hey, journalists, we've done this wonderful research. Would you like to come and write about that wonderful research and put it on your website? So whoever it is, The Guardian or, the Times, or probably more likely some tech publication will say, 51 Degrees has done this amazing research. You should go and have a look at it. It's here. And all of that together basically means that we do better in terms of search engine rankings and all of the sort of promotion that goes around putting a business together. So that sort of undertaking is historically, we might have engaged a third party to do that sort of work for us, but it's also just extremely time consuming. So there's a lot of manual research needed in order to understand, is this piece is this story that we're going to talk about worth talking about? We will then go through a process to properly research the article. Then we'll research the journalists that we're going to send the article to, and then after all of that, we'll start to send it out to the journalists, which in itself is a laborious process. So what we've done with Strawberry Browser, and I'm going to give you a live demo of a little bit later, is we've built an AI agent solution that does exactly that. The whole thing probably took me less than 3 or 4 hours to build. And at the end of it, basically, we can produce a digital PR piece in probably 2 hours in total, where historically that whole process would have taken weeks or even months. And so it's basically ripped out many of the laborious parts of creating a digital PR piece and enabled the AI browser to do it for me instead. This same thesis basically applies to so many other things. So you can replace the words digital PR with all many other words, writing a piece of content for a website, writing our website, writing a presentation, writing a report for whatever it might be. Ultimately, the components I'm describing here can be applied in many, many different ways. But this specific one for digital PR, the way that the Strawberry Browser agent works is it first of all goes through this ideation process where it'll go and research some, at my direction, it will research some ideas for digital PR pieces. It'll go away and find, I think I've said something like 5 different stories that it's going to go and think about. It'll then report back to me with the 5 stories that it's suggesting, and I'll choose which one of those 5 is my favorite and the one that I want to go ahead with. It will then go away and research that topic in even more detail. In that research process, it might review 100, 200, 300 different web pages of information to understand, more and more and more information that it wants to fold into that digital PR piece. I know from my sort of background that digital PR does best when it has very official sorts of sources. And so therefore I've told it to look at sources like the ONS or .gov or other sort of semi-official sources for pieces of information that go together with the story that I'm specifically interested in. And so a digital PR piece that we've done via this browser, which I'm personally a massive fan of, is we've researched how SME businesses are using AI, and how that compares to SME businesses using AI against enterprise businesses. Spoiler, enterprise businesses are investing a ton of money in it, and SME businesses haven't got that money to invest in it, and so therefore aren't doing that much. And we think that's a major problem. And so therefore we want to talk about that problem, and we've used this digital PR AI agent to do so.
Nick, just a very quick question, sorry to interrupt. We've had a couple in the chat around how can we as a user building these agents know that the information, if we take this research page, for example, is factual, and are there any checks in place to ensure that? And then an additional question would be, where would the source of this info be? Because we know, for example, OpenAI uses Reddit a lot. So yeah, it would be good. Any color you have there.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, the source of information in the prompt, which I'll come on to when I go through a demo a little bit later, I've defined some of the types of sources that I wanted to use. I also will go through another process a little bit later, which is the technical name for it is called LLM prompt chaining, which is where you break parts of processes down into smaller chunks and then put them through an LLM. When I say LLM, I mean a large language model such as ChatGPT or Google Gemini. You break processes down into smaller and smaller chunks and then use them again and again in LLM prompts. Now, the reason for saying that LLM prompt chaining point is because what I do is I take the output, because you're right, these platforms do hallucinate and they make stuff up. So I take the output from one story and I put it into another LLM, and I say, find me all of the links that prove these facts are correct. And then I click through those links to ensure that those facts are correct. So I've basically broken in a financial services world, you'd call it the first line of defense and the second line of defense. I've added a second line of defense into the process by taking it to a different LLM platform and getting the second LLM platform to check the work of the first LLM platform, which greatly reduces the probability that you're going to have hallucinations getting through. Both might simultaneously hallucinate, and therefore, the third stage, and in financial services terms, we call this the third line of defense. It's all very boring, but it's essentially where we think of human in the loop, and that's where, ultimately, I am the accountable person. Every person using AI is accountable for their work. It's not the AI's fault if something's gone wrong. It's your fault because you're the accountable person, and so therefore I take responsibility for everything that goes down from my desk is owned by me, and I'm the accountable person. And so if there's any errors in that, I have to be accountable for that. So I use LLMs to support me in my proving of those facts and proving that all those are correct. But ultimately, it's down to me and making sure that I've done the research to ensure they're correct. And yeah, I definitely don't ever want to. I'm clearly extremely bought into the AI evolution, but we all know there are many flaws, as with all technologies and all things. That there are brilliant bits and there are not so brilliant bits, and you have to address the not so brilliant bits with mechanisms to catch those. So the AI agent then goes ahead and writes lots of emails, which it then sends to journalists. And those journalists hopefully can write lots of lovely press articles about those sorts of topics. And ultimately, we are expecting circa 10 media placements for each one of these campaigns that we run, and the time saving is huge. I've estimated it at 90%, but it's very, very hard to say specifically, but it's just it's huge. The second one, I think the second one is probably quite niche. So I'll go over it a little bit, but I'm not going to go too much in detail. It's just because it was front of mind for me in producing this material. The second one is an AI agent that does AI search or an AI search audit. So AI search is where you see at the top of Google now. Google is giving you AI search results as the first response at the top of the page very often. I predict that if you look on the tabs on Google, if you're looking on a browser,
I
might just, I think, yeah, there we go. No worries. So when you're on Google on a computer, on the left-hand side of the normal search pane, you can see a thing called AI mode, which is where Google answers to you via AI, which makes Google basically look like ChatGPT. I predict that AI mode is going to become the only mode in 3 to 6 months. Some people say it might take longer. Some people say it's going to take less time. But ultimately, that is going to dramatically change the way that businesses buy and sell, and customers, buy goods, etc., etc. Because all of a sudden you'll be using that to inform your decisions on how you buy and sell things. So therefore, ranking well within AI search is clearly a really, really important thing to businesses, including my own. And so I've built this AI search audit tool for myself to support me getting better at ranking well in AI search and on ChatGPT and Perplexity, etc., etc. When we deal with clients, we don't necessarily deal with things like AI search because we're normally about building software. But actually, I've also given this thing to some of my clients for free because it was something that was quick and easy to build, and they can then go and use it. And so, this sort of tooling is something that can be really powerful for businesses to do better themselves, but also it's the sort of thing that other businesses might buy. So the challenge is ultimately getting good at search engine optimization and generative engine optimization. Historically was expensive, time consuming, etc., etc. What the AI agent does is it's researched to understand the things that are really important. It's then built checking mechanisms to go and check these things about whatever website you give it. The agent then goes away and does all of its research and then comes back and gives you a report to say, how's this website doing on these different areas. So, for example, if I put in the 51 Degrees website, which is my company, then it comes up with some feedback to say, some of the bits are pretty good. So, for example, we tried to build credibility and authority, etc., relatively well. However, there's this technical thing called a schema, and we've done a really, really bad job of putting all of this stuff into schemas, which is actually what AI search things need in order to be able to rank people. So ultimately, there's a big bit missing, and we can replace that big bit in only a couple of days' work, and all of a sudden, our business is then going to rank way higher on AI search, and we'll get lots more customers coming through to buy from us. So that's another example of AI agents in action. Other examples that I use, use in my team are, well, in fact, I'll talk about some of our client work as maybe a more, a slightly easier way to digest some of the things that we've done. So an example of an AI agent that we've built for my client. My client is a business called Heatable, and Heatable installs boilers in people's houses. They've gone from a standing start in 2017 as a startup to being the third largest installer of boilers in the country now, and they install tens of thousands of boilers every year. And it's founded by a couple of brothers from Warrington who are absolutely lovely guys who have just done an amazing job of applying the internet to a business, to a world where the internet wasn't really applied in 2017. That's become very successful. Using AI is their next leg up, the next way of enhancing their business, and so that's we've been working with them to do so. So what happens with the heating industry? Some of you may be aware of this or not. Is you get to around about this time of year and everyone goes and turns the heating on for the first time in 6 months, and if your boiler is going to break, that is the time it's going to break essentially. And so what happens for a business like Heatable, who have installed tens of thousands of boilers, is all of a sudden they get literally hundreds of people every day saying, my boiler's just broken, you installed it 3 years ago, please can you come and fix my boiler? In those scenarios, there's a range of different things that could occur. So, for example, one of them could be, I can smell gas. That is clearly really, really bad. And so therefore, we need to address that in a certain way. Another might be, all of my radiators are working, but my radiator in my lounge is not working. And so therefore the heating system is working, but for some reason that radiator is not working. In the I can smell gas scenario, we handle that via a specific channel that we're built into the AI agent, which has extreme governance around it, because clearly what it says next is obviously very, very important, that it doesn't give the customer bad information. the next channel on the radiator not working in the lounge, what it does there is, and some of these cases, actually what needs to happen is something totally different. Like, for example, bleeding that one radiator, which is letting the air out of the top of that one radiator, which is something that most people probably do themselves. So what it does is direct you to a YouTube video that basically enables you to solve those sorts of things. Another regular one is topping up your boiler system with water, for example. The next one is my boiler has got water leaking out of the casing of the boiler, which weirdly I now know is almost always a manufacturer issue. And Worcester-Bosch or Valiant or whatever it is, they're the people who actually the customer needs to speak to, because that is a warranty claim for something that's gone wrong inside the boiler. And that's about half of the inquiries my customer gets are those. So what the AI agent then does is it extracts the information needed from the customer to fill in a warranty claim and send the warranty claim off to the manufacturer. And so let's say, for example, that customer has that problem on a Friday night when Heatable goes up for business at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening and they don't come back in until Monday morning. Well, the good news is our AI agent now deals with that customer immediately, and then passes that over to Worcester-Bosch or Valiant, whoever it might be, in real time. And therefore, Worcester-Bosch and Valiant have come out to them on the Saturday morning to fix their boiler for them, and Heatable's, doors have remained closed for that entire time because it's the weekend. So it's a written example of then solving the problem really quickly for the customer. And the final one is, something's gone wrong, the engineer has done something, they've left some mud on the carpet, or who knows, whatever else stuff could happen. And in that case, it hands it over to Heatable. That AI agent that we built for Heatable ultimately has automated about 50% of the work that was being done by those teams, which is obviously huge. But much more importantly is the customer service it brings is brilliant for the customers, because ultimately all of those customers are dealt with immediately in real time, and they get the answer they need in immediate terms. If it needs to go into Heatable, it's directed into Heatable, and then Heatable go through their usual process, or vice versa, it's dealt with in real time. So that's an example, and we've then got countless other examples. I won't go through anymore because I'm really keen to get onto our demonstration. But we do, it can be all sorts of different things, onboarding customers. In fact, I always think of things in terms of a customer funnel. And so when you think of a customer funnel, that you start with trying to find customers, you then want to sell to customers, you onboard customers, and then you deliver customers. And so when you go through that customer funnel, basically there's step after step after step after step that AI agents can apply to. And that's basically what we do. We're building these tools right the way across that customer funnel. Great. Okay, so next up is live demos. I'll pause there for a second, Amelia. I haven't got the chat open, but are there any questions that no, all good? Perfect.
All good, yeah. Demo time, I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, I'm quite nervous, if I'm honest, because demos always go wrong. But anyway, let's see how we go. So I'll start with the foundation. Basically, this is not, this information is not specifically for building AI agents. This information applies to building anything with AI, in my opinion. And so the first point here is craft your prompts in a repository. That sounds really technical. It's not. Basically, I strongly advise you not to work out of I'll go to Google, can't quite click on it. This is Google Gemini. I strongly advise you not to write things in the Google Gemini box when you are writing AI search, and the same with ChatGPT. And the reason being is it takes me back to sort of 1994 or something, doing homework. Losing a prompt when you've spent 45 minutes writing it is really, really, really annoying. Just like in the olden days when you used to lose your homework because you hadn't saved something or whatever else. So I strongly urge you to write whatever it is you're doing in something that automatically saves all the time, such as, for example, a Google Doc. And so this is a Google Doc. Sorry, can you see my? I've changed tabs, Amelia. Can you see it? Yeah, great, thanks. So this Google Doc is my repository for this piece of work that I'm doing, and I do all of my work in here, and then I copy and paste out of this into my LLM page to ultimately go ahead and do that piece of work. So the first is keeping a record of the work that you're doing in a third-party platform such as a Google Doc, or I also use Notion, for example, which is a knowledge sharing platform, which is also really cool. The next is build your prompts iteratively. And so start with the small, with the core functionality for what you're doing, deliver against that core functionality, and then test and learn, test and then test and learn until you sort of evolve from it. So one of the AI agents that I'm going to go through in a second of how I built it, ultimately I started with a process that was going to take about 3 steps, and it ended up being a 6-step process because I realized as I kept on iterating that I could make it better by adding new steps or new parts of the process. But do that iteratively. Don't try and boil the ocean in one go. Try and sort of break down tasks into a smaller iteration and do it that way. And then the final one is using LLM chaining, as I said, which is where you can take a prompt into your first LM, as this is an example, and you break that down into smaller components and iterate through that more time. So an example of LLM chaining here is I will use Google Gemini to write my prompt, which then becomes my prompt for Strawberry Browser. So I don't write the Strawberry Browser prompt myself because that takes take me ages to write it all out. Instead, I use Google Gemini to do that. I've also done some other stuff in Google Gemini, which makes it a lot easier for myself. So, for example, I have, can't quite click on the button. Here we go. I have these things called gems, and these gems basically are, a bucket that is tailored around a specific thing. And so, for example, I have gems for certain clients that I work with, or other things, and including this 51D general, and that's basically my general gem. And this gem basically is a base prompt within it, which says, I'm an AI consultancy. I like to operate in these ways. I like to, ensure that I have human in the loop AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so if I do any work, I start off with Google Gemini with a smaller prompt. I then use that to build a bigger prompt to go into that other platform. And so that's the sort of foundations or best practices that I use when I'm thinking about AI agents. There's a ton of other stuff, as I said, we can't go through everything today, but these are some of the things that I just urge you to do whenever you're doing AI work to try and use these sorts of concepts. So the first live demo is the digital PR tool that I've described. So what I'm going to do here is I'll go back to my Google Doc. And I've written a prompt here, which I will then put into Gemini, which in turn will write the prompt for Strawberry Browser. So you can see here, so please can you create a prompt that I'll use for Strawberry Browser to create a companion, that's what they call their agents in Strawberry Browser, which is called Polly the PR service, that replicates what ABC service does. I've put ABC service in square brackets to avoid any trademark disputes, but ultimately this is going away and researching another service on the internet, their website for this other service, and saying, what do we think this thing does? And I'm going to try and replicate something along those lines. Make the prompt to Strawberry Browser very detailed, logical, and well designed. The companion is going to digital PR for me following these steps. The objectives of digital PR is to have articles written by journalists based upon the research that Polly does. And then here are the steps. So I would then take that prompt, as I said, drop it into Google Gemini, or obviously, I use Google Gemini. I think AI is getting to the point where everyone's sort of started to back their own horse in terms of their favorite. Many people use ChatGPT, obviously. The things that I'd say are really important. There's obviously amazing freemium accounts for all these services. Obviously, go ahead and use those freemium accounts. But as soon as anything is work related, you should absolutely. Oh, have I frozen? Am I?
You have frozen on the screen. Actually, you're back now. We can hear you. Absolutely.
So what I'm also realizing is I need even more RAM in my computer because I'm doing so many things simultaneously, it gets a bit overwhelmed. Anyway, so yeah, whenever you're doing anything on a work basis, you should really try and encourage your employer to have paid for licenses for these services. Ultimately, if it's not paid for license, then whatever you're doing theoretically could leak from the AI service. Where it is a paid for license, then that won't be happening. As I said, I believe Gemini, which is made by Google, is going to be, probably the most powerful tool in the future. It will almost certainly be either ChatGPT or Gemini. based upon the fact they've got all the money, all the people, and all the data, and so therefore, it's highly likely they're going to be sort of up there with the winners. There's obviously other choices as well, but yeah, that's my. And so here you can see Gemini has then created this prompt, which I can then copy that prompt. Can't quite catch it. There we go. And there's lots and lots of stuff as we go down here. I'll move back to my what I would do is I would then copy that like this, and I'll move it back over to my prompt repository. I'm going to then talk through the same thing, which I did earlier here. So this is now the prompt, which is going to get copied again into Strawberry Browser. But what I do is I first of all work on it here, because this is a much easier way to see the prompt and edit it versus working into one of these LLM screens, which, as we've all probably seen in the past, the formatting isn't great sometimes. It's quite hard to see what's going on, etc. So here is the prompt. It then says, the different things that I want it to do. It goes through these processes. Step one is the ideation. So this is digital PR ideation. Analyzing research, and someone asks the types of entities that I want it to look at. So, for example, I've told it here that I want it to look at the Office of National Statistics, gov.co.uk. Then these are government entities, so DSIT, DBT, Treasury, the Alan Turing Institute, and others. So we've directed it in the right sort of direction for the type of research we want it to do. We've also said the FCA, the Bank of England, Ofgem, Tech UK, and other sort of similar entities. So clearly it can go off piste, and it's going to look at other places as well. We've tried to direct it towards official sources of information, because ultimately these are the pieces sort of information that's much more likely to get written about by journalists. We then tell it how to generate the ideas, and then present back to me for approval. I'm not going to go through the nitty-gritty of all of this, because I'm sure many of you aren't interested in PR in the slightest, but ultimately you will be interested in whatever you're interested in, and your same prompt for your use case will ultimately apply here. I then ask it to wait for approval. So before going on to the next step in every step, come back to me and check in with me to make sure this is working as I expect it to. I then ask it to deepen the research. So I say, it's suggested 3 or 5 or whatever it is ideas. I've said, go ahead with idea 2, let's say. It then goes away and does significantly more research to really pan out that idea as much as it can. And then it reports back with its findings. It then writes a big piece that I would then publish. It writes a press release to go along with that piece. It selects journalists from a list that I've written. I have a list of journalists that I've used. In actual fact, I've got another companion that's enriched that journalist list. So it's taken all of these 300 journalists and find out all of the stuff they write about. So when you send a content piece to a journalist, if you send it to a journalist, let's say, for example, I'm sending out a piece that's based on technology, and I'm sending that to a journalist who does finance. Well, the finance journalist is never going to write technology, so it'd just be a waste of time. So instead, I've used an enrichment companion to enrich my list of journalists so I can send the right pieces to the right journalists. And then it goes ahead and writes the emails to those journalists to send this piece out to each of them in a personalized way. What I find is, with this sort of personalization, you need to be slightly careful, because I think, the world's become over personalized in a sort of superficial way, AI slop, basically. And so I'd be slightly careful about sort of, pretending you're the journalist's best friend, because I might not find that pretty cringeworthy, considering they've never heard of you. But anyway, you can use this to write those emails. And so if I then go over to Strawberry Browser, you can see Polly here. And so I'll go in a little bit more detail first and just show you the prompt again in Polly. So this is now exactly the prompt that I've written via Gemini that I've copied into Strawberry Browser. In fact, sorry, I should give a little bit more instructions to Strawberry Browser. So Strawberry Browser is a web browser that is somewhat equivalent to Google Chrome. However, rather than Google Chrome, you are in control all of the time. What Strawberry Browser does is you can be in control if you want, but also it can be in control too, if you like. And it's sort of built natively in that way. So it can control what it's doing via these companions. And you can be as involved as you like. So sometimes you might just be looking at the BBC News and you can see who's kicked out Strictly or whatever it is, via the browser. But vice versa, you could say, tell me everyone who's ever been kicked out of Strictly forever. And it will go away and research that via websites, and then I can give you all those answers. Or you can get more and more complicated using these things called companions. And these companions then basically can do this autonomous work. You can also connect Strawberry Browser up to your Google account, so it can, or Microsoft account, so it can send emails on your behalf. You can connect up to your Slack, which is your messenger service, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever else. You can connect up to databases, spreadsheets, or any other source of information. Like I said previously, in the connections and triggers, basically have the ability to connect Strawberry Browser up. And just see if I can show you that quickly. Where am I? So in settings, you can then go to integrations, and in integrations, you connect to all of these different places. And all of these different places will basically enable it to do those things. So for example, sending emails, connect up to Google, Sheets, Calendar, Drive, etc. One thing I would have to say, because of the professional nature of our sort of work, is do be cautious with connecting your life up to everything, or indeed, arguably even more importantly, your work up to everything. It is possible that these things can be hacked. There's this thing called LLM prompt injection, where basically, it is theoretically possible to get these things to expose your details to other people, and so therefore you should connect up the minimal amount possible, and just be conscious of the fact that there are security risks in doing some of this stuff. So there's my disclaimer, I guess, is going through the process. However, used in a minimalistic way, ultimately these things can still be really powerful. And certainly when I think of Polly, all Polly is basically doing is researching on the internet stuff that is already public. And so therefore there's absolutely no risk at all, because all of that information is already public. But yeah, ultimately that you should exercise caution when connecting all of your accounts up to these things. So if I just then come back to the browser, and come back to these companions, I'm going to go to Polly, and I've copied and pasted that prompt into Polly, and so therefore Polly will go ahead and follow the actions that I give it. So for example, I'm going to then say, please suggest some ideas for AI for recruitment platforms like Ivy. I have not done this previously, so I've got no idea what this is going to come back with. Should have done research. This is now going away and having to think about that. What I would say is at this point, it is going to start doing an unbelievable amount of internet browsing, and everything else might slow down. So if I start sort of, I probably freeze in a horrible position or something, but let's see what happens. So it's now going to go away and start doing that research, and it will probably look at, something like 100 different web pages to go away and research the information needed in order to answer that point, and it will keep on feeding back that information. So I've done this previously for the articles, obviously. Screen. So whilst it is running away in the background, I will instead look at a previous one. And so this is the process to creating this SME focused. Sorry, there's a lot here, isn't there? So, for example, one of the latest steps that you will have remembered from the when I went through it is then to produce this full comprehensive report, for example. So this is the point where it's saying to me, great, I've produced this full comprehensive report. And then clearly above this, there's this information as we've gone through the process. In fact, here are some, here's the first point, which is to say, suggest the angles. So here is an angle that is suggested, here's another angle that is suggested, and here's a final angle that is suggested. And instead, indeed, I've opted for this angle, which is the story called The Great Divide, the two-tier AI economy. In fact, I can also, while that's whirring away in the background, show you this is all live now, so I can show you this live on our website. So this is indeed the piece of research that Strawberry Browser created that is now live on our website, and it basically looks at a fundamental shift between financial services and SMEs, where financial services, 75% of financial services firms are now actively using AI, whereas 5% of manufacturing firms are, and something like 40-something% of SMEs are not interested in the slightest. And my concern is those SMEs are going to fall further behind in productivity gap. Without sort of getting too much into my own interests here, I'm deeply passionate about making SMEs more productive. 51% of people in the UK are employed by SMEs, and they produce something like 60% more public sector output. And so them doing well is really, really important to us all. And sadly, they're falling behind in the use of AI, whereas financial services firms, for example, are using it extensively. It goes on into why is AI for SMEs stalling? Some of the success stories it's ignoring, the compounded cost of inaction, a call to action, what we're going to do about it, and then the goes ahead. So this is the piece of research that was written by Strawberry Browser from this prompt that I have given it. We'll go back to Strawberry Browser now and see how it's getting on. Okay, only 19 or 50 of the web pages through, so I don't think we're going to get into that on this call, and I'm going to stop it because basically I think I'm going to keep on freezing if I don't. But yeah, basically that's an example of how Strawberry Browser works. It's really, really quick and easy to use, and ultimately, you cannot, other than connecting up your personal information, you cannot go wrong by just using it. And so I strongly recommend with any of those sorts of services to just get involved. And it's the same with OpenAI's Atlas, or indeed Perplexity's Comet as well. So that those sorts of browser-based services which enable you to build AI agents within them. You can automate tasks, you can do things for your personal projects, you can do things for your work projects, and we're seeing massive gains for our clients in terms of some of the work that we do here, and it's they can be complex, like the one for Heatable that I described, where it's built from code, but as I've just shown as well, they can also be really simple. I think I've covered everything there. The second demo was going to be on the AI search thing. To be honest, I think that's even more dry than the digital PR thing. So I won't demo that. We're running out of time as well.
So I actually did get a very good response in the chat, Nick.
Really? The AI?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
I think we might have a lot of marketers on the call.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, let's do it. What did I do? I imagine the prompts are still in Gemini. The funny thing is here, you then get to see what everyone's been prompting, and I indeed did have a airlock in my radiator over the weekend, which I was trying to solve. So that is indeed the problem. So, for example, I wrote the prompt for the GEO. GEO is in Generative Engine Optimization, which is the phrase that some people are using for the new world of search engine optimization. So I wrote the prompt for GEO in Gemini here, but actually what I then did, and often do because of this point of LLM chaining, is I broke it up into different sections. And so some of the sections I broke up into individually are, one of them is EEAT. And so EEAT is something like expertise, something authoritativeness. I don't know what the final, but basically is like, how credible is this business? And so I did an EAT section, I did a content section, and then finally I realized that there was this issue with the schemas, and the schemas are the sort of like almost like the skeleton that goes across a website in order to direct Google or any AI search engine to understand very, very quickly what was going on within that website. And so basically, I did a separate tool for the schemas, and basically then had another final tool that merged all three of those reports together. And actually, if I got an example of the output, I'll do one sec. Great. So here is an example of a report written by that Strawberry browser agent, and it is on 51 Degrees. It basically has ranked the AI readiness of 51 Degrees' website as C+. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see more easily. And it said basically there's a technical failure altogether in the absolute absence of a schema markup. The schema markup is that thing I just said about, basically directing the browser well to say, who are the people behind this business, who are the, what's the credible proof that this business has done interesting stuff, et cetera, et cetera. It then goes into more detail in each of the sections. So, for example, foundational experience and trust. So there's actually some strengths here. However, there's plenty of weaknesses as well. For example, intentionally in all of our case studies, we have not put stats. However, that then makes our content basically much less credible because we're not sort of pinning our colors to the mast, etc. So it's giving us some recommendations on how we can improve that. And other content-related activities. It's then looking in more detail into expertise and authority, and it's saying actually there's some excellent, dare I say it, being praising my own work there, excellent content on the website. However, the authoritativeness is not captured at all because ultimately, the backgrounds of my founder and I, for example, haven't really been covered, et cetera, et cetera. So whilst there is some really good content, we're not capturing the benefit of that. And then the final part is the sort of technical part around these schemas, and ultimately, the vast majority of it is just totally lacking, and so therefore it can't rank based upon that. And it's then written a phased project plan to say phase 1 do this, phase 2 do that, phase 3 do that, etc. So the agent in this case probably took me 3 hours to build, and it's now doing a piece of work which I can trigger anytime I like. It'll go away and do, other than using up all my RAM for about half an hour, it'll go away and do that, and then give me that report, which, when you're producing content regularly, which I know Ivy does, for example, you can keep on checking every month to say, is all of this content meeting our framework in terms of these schemas and all the rest of the stuff, and constantly checking to make sure it's going to rank well. Historically, you'd have been paying someone else to do that, of course, and so therefore you've just saved yourself probably, a few £1,000s every month in not needing to have a retainer to an expensive third party. Great. Any other questions?
Amazing. Thank you, Nick.